A prolonged housing crisis in China upending long-held values such as the belief in the need to own property. And that could spell trouble for authorities keen to reduce their housing inventories. CNA's Lauren Ong with this report.
买房的，像原来想炒房那个，现在都不买了。
The last 3 years marked a rude awakening for this 55-year-old driver as he watches the value of his 2 flats erode with each passing year. Bought during China's housing boom before the pandemic, he recalls a time not long ago when he could make a fortune if he were to sell them.
我那时候买，现在不赔钱，现在还挣钱，但是没挣多少。但是19年卖的时候就能挣1半。 就是4000买能卖到8000，那现在就不行了。
The Harbin resident has lived in the northeastern Chinese city for over 30 years, and the past 7 in his own apartment. At the same time, his son moved into the other flat after graduating. In China, housing is not just deeply tied to intergenerational wealth. In most cases, it's also a precondition for marriage, prompting parents to pour their life savings into preparing so-called marriage homes for their children.
有的人是咋呢？他没有太多的经济基础，尤其刚改的，就是刚结婚需要买房的，他自己没有那么雄厚的资金，也没有那么好的经济条件，他可能会需要父母帮衬。 父母帮衬的情况下，他就会考虑，他就会犹豫：我每个月月供我要还多少钱？我自己的薪资水平能不能覆盖我这个月供？
Property purchase has long been viewed as an investment that can't go wrong in China, but a housing crisis that emerged in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic has upended China's cultural mindset around home ownership, especially among its young people.
During the housing boom that began 2 decades ago, more than half of wealth creation came from the appreciation of housing prices. But home prices peaked in 2021 and have since dipped to mid-2019 levels, leaving those who bought at the peak stuck with properties worth much less. With property making up 70% of household wealth on average, it's a significant blow to people's spending power and the long-held belief in property as a guaranteed investment, especially among the next generation of home buyers.
This symbolic effect tied ownership to marriage prospects, education access, and intergeneration wealth. I think for younger generations, they burdened by the high housing prices, and they also are facing stagnant wages. They are increasingly to question this narrative. So particularly when the housing prices in most cities kept dropping after the pandemic, houses seems no longer a good instrument for them to secure family wealth, especially for the younger generation.
Having witnessed the generations before them driving home prices to levels beyond their reach before suffering steep losses in the current downturn, many young Chinese are no longer as bent on as their parents when it comes to owning a home.
其实你租房子住，我觉得现在也是一个特别好的一个选择，没有必要执着于非要去买一套房子，当做可能，我觉得可能有些人觉得是一套房子就相当于是一份 执着，我觉得放下执着，你多体验其他的事情，我觉得可能会更好一些。
现在普通人来说，其实就是买房子并不是为了投资，而是为了就在这个城市有一个归属感，有个家就很温暖，就是这样，更多是来享受一个更好的环境。
The changing perspective is bad news for authorities who have, in their efforts to prop up the ailing property sector, pledged to increase the supply of government-subsidized homes to meet the needs of young people, among other measures. It doesn't help that the housing slump also coincides with seismic economic and demographic shifts.
Housing demand, as we said, fundamentally depends on income growth rate and population growth rate. Now, both indicators, these growth rates are going to be much lower than the previous 4 decades. So there is no reason to believe it's going to be really high housing price increase in the near future. So now, investors and home buyers, they're going to rethink, oh, should I buy this housing or not? What will happen to the housing price in the future?
Although property sales have improved in some regions, such as first-tier cities Beijing and Shanghai, most lower-tier cities continue to struggle, forcing developers and local governments, which rely heavily on land sales as a source of revenue, to get creative. Lauren Ong, CNA, Harbin.